All right.
Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. I know it's been a minute since we met, so hopefully everyone is doing well. If I can have someone call this, I would like to call this meeting to order. If I can have someone read the declaration of a quorum, that that will be great. Do we still need to read that that executive order issued by? Okay. So if I can have someone please read that, it's at the top of the agenda.
Someone that's not Kimberly.
No, I'm still trying to get my paperwork up. So
I'm trying to split the screen.
Okay.
I didn't mean to laugh there. But Nico's computer is messing up right now, so he's trying to. So I just wanted to let you know that I wasn't laughing. All right.
That's fine.
Kind of appropriate.
Nico's coming in though. I think he was laughing at Nico, not at us. So.
Okay.
All right, everyone's in. Nico's here. Who else just joined us?
We have some visitors.
Okay.
Nika, she joined as well.
Okay.
Hey everyone.
Hey. All right. Do we have anyone that's up and ready?
Good evening.
I think we're ready to get started again. We now have additional folks. So.
Okay. So again, I was asking, I'd like to call this meeting to order on April 7, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. If I can please have someone read the order issued by the governor. You'll find it at the top of the agenda. Everyone's muted, so if anyone's trying to talk.
Oh, I can read it. I just have to find my agenda. Okay. As a result of an executive order issued by Governor J.B. Pritzker suspending in-person attendance requirements for public meetings, City Council members and staff will be participating in this meeting remotely. Due to public health concerns, residents may provide public comment virtually at the meeting or in writing.
Thank you, Nika.
Here, roll call. Oh, sorry, you didn't motion. A motion.
Can we motion to have roll call?
Second. Oh, I make a motion. We have roll call.
Okay. Can I have a second?
Second.
All right. Any opposed?
I have to actually make the call. Roll call.
Oh, okay. All right.
Jamal.
Oh, here.
Blanca. I think she just called in sick. Rick is out today. Shauna.
Present.
Nico.
Here.
Nikia.
Nika, here.
Nika. I'm going to do this right. Janitha.
Here.
Clarence is not present. And Doug?
Here.
Having done roll call, all approved, say yay.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Okay, so the first thing we have on the agenda is public comment. Do we have any? Okay, so Karen has a comment, so if we can allow her to speak, that'd be great.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Happy April. I was looking at the agenda for tonight and I see it appears that there are either no topics, no complaints that are being presented, or they're not being included in the packet for the public to review in advance of your meeting. So I just wanted clarification on that, please.
Sure. So we have no new complaints as of yet. We will have one coming up soon, but we've completed the ones that were stored at the station. Tonight, the only thing that we'll be reviewing is one that we sent back for another look. But other than that, there are no new cases for us to review just as of yet.
So can I speak to what Karen just spoke to? Karen, if you click on the packet,
Yes.
if you click on the blue link, it should take you to the information, or you can scroll down.
So,
But it's there.
and it's just the one item tonight.
Correct.
Yeah, so I saw that. I was just surprised that after a cancellation last month that there wasn't any new material. Not that I think there should be. It's a dramatic drop.
Well, and we're going to actually speak to that later on in the meeting.
All
So
right.
you
Thanks,
will find out
everybody.
more. Okay, I just wanted to make sure you had access to the one we're speaking to tonight.
Do you have any other public comment? Having none, we'll continue on the agenda. Next on the agenda, we have the approval of minutes. So if I can have someone motion to approve the February 3rd, 2021 meeting minutes, that would be great. If I can have a motion.
I move to approve the February 3rd meeting minutes.
I second the motion.
I'll do a roll call.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Jamal,
Aye. Or yeah.
Nakia.
Aye.
Shauna.
Here.
Aye. Doug,
Aye.
Janitha,
Aye.
Jamal.
I don't think he heard.
Jamal
Aye.
has an aye. Okay, thank you. Motion passed.
All right, thank you. As we said a little bit earlier, we have no new complaints to review for this meeting for the new business, which is the next thing on the agenda, next item on the agenda. So we are going to move forward to the next item being the old business. For the old business, we do have a second review of a DI number 20/13. I don't know if we would have one of our officers or commander to just kind of give us a review of what that was.
Sure, let me talk.
Sorry, do I need to motion for us to talk about
That's a
that?
motion to discuss, yes.
Yes, Candace. So can I have if I can have a motion to discuss the second review of DI 2013.
I move for discussion of the second review of DI 2013.
And if I can have a second, please.
A
I
second.
second.
A roll call.
Yes. Shauna,
Aye.
Doug,
Yay.
Janitha,
Aye.
Nakia,
Aye.
Jamal,
Aye.
Nico.
Aye.
Motion passed.
Thank you.
You may discuss.
Thank you. Commander.
Okay, let me start with a brief revisit of the case, and then we'll talk about Sergeant Dabrowski's memo dated on January 30th of this year, who did the second review. The initial complaint was a third-party witness to the interaction between the officers and the individual involved in the traffic accident felt that the bias might have been at play and an explanation for lack of enforcement action. That being that the driver, the individual involved in the accident, was white and therefore was not ticketed or cited, and that ticketing, citing, or arrest was appropriate in this situation, but was not taken due to racial bias. Sergeant Dabrowski has done the second review of this, and I'm referencing the last page of his memo. He brings up what I think are some good points, and again, we're going to follow this up with a review of the video. This incident did take place. The officer that was responsible, that responded, was, we would say, as he characterized, an inexperienced rookie officer. And this would fall under the umbrella of a rookie mistake. It was also a complicated, complex call at the end of a 12-hour shift. One of the downsides of a 12-hour shift is there is potentially, at least unconsciously, a reluctance to take enforcement action after a 12-hour day that may take you into a 14 or 15-hour day. So Sergeant Dabrowski did not find that necessarily that there was bias, but fatigue at play, maybe some lack of good guidance from a senior officer and a rookie officer faced with a complicated call, again, without maybe the guidance that he or she should have received. So any questions up to this point before we move on to reviewing the video?
I do have a question.
Sure.
How did he make that determination?
I think that when he reviewed the body worn camera and the investigation in its totality, that's how he came to his conclusion. We talked before about the value of the body worn camera. The body worn camera is going to provide this committee with the largest piece of the investigation that officers are using, that supervisors are using. When we read this in memo form, we're only capturing part of the picture or part of the incident. Where we watch the body worn camera, it is the biggest piece of our investigations. So I would say this: let's defer to the body worn camera footage. We'll review that, and if you have the same question, I definitely would want to talk about it some more. Before we go to the body worn camera footage, I did review it. There's a couple things I wanted to make note of and bring to your attention. If you wanted to maybe jot down a couple notes yourself, or just something I could bring to your attention. This is about a 42-minute video. I'm going to start it at about minute 3, just to kind of chop it down, because that's just the response. These are approximations of time, but about 7 minutes, 10 seconds into the video, the driver admits to driving and crashing. He does display, I would say, signs of intoxication. He's belligerent, non-responsive to the officers. At about 11:27 into the video, there is a witness that does make a statement that they had been drinking. And about 13:25, the driver admits to being 20 years old, even though he doesn't provide the officers his information. So right there, with a 20-year-old driver, witness saying they had been drinking, that there alone is a zero tolerance DUI. In addition to that, there's more witness interviews. About 14 minutes in, medical attention is summoned. There's then about 16:15, there's the two officers, the rookie officer and the veteran officer, confer with each other. And I think that that's probably the big portions of the elements of the offense. It kind of sets the table for what we're about to review. So is everybody ready? We have to go into executive. Yeah.
So
I won't play it till we're in executive session, but before we go in, so.
Perfect. Okay, thank you, Commander Glue, for that overview of that. So if I can have if we can have a motion to convene into executive session, that'd be great if anyone can read that motion.
I motion to move this meeting to the executive session.
You share a screen before.
You have to read the entire motion. Unfortunately, this is by state statute.
It's under the executive session for the agenda.
I don't have the agenda pulled up right now. Can someone motion for us, please?
I got a motion to convene into executive session pursuant to 5 Illinois 9 complied statutes, ILCS 120/2A. I move that the Citizen Police Review Commission convene into the executive session to discuss agenda items regarding personnel.
If I can have a second,
I second the motion.
have roll call.
Doug,
Yes.
Janita,
Aye.
Cynthia,
Aye.
Shauna,
Aye.
Jamal,
Aye.
Nico.
Aye.
Okay, we'll go to next session. So we're going to go ahead and pause the video in this meeting. We're just waiting for Nico, I think, or did he drop off? He's somewhere. He's somewhere. Okay. We can go ahead and reconvene the discussion in open meeting now. It is 7:34 that we are reconvening back into open our commission meeting.
I think that, so we're good to go.
Yes, you can go ahead and continue and deliberate.
I think that after watching that video, I can't speak for everybody, but I think that there would be a consensus among all of us that there was probable cause for an arrest for zero tolerance DUI at the minimum. He was 20 years old. He admitted to drinking. As Mr. Whitmore was started kind of also touched on the fact that agitated, belligerent, so on and so forth. You can kind of check off a lot of the intoxicated list. So I think there's a consensus opinion. The consensus opinion would be there's probable cause to make an arrest. Again, I think it comes down to, was this arrest not made because of bias, or the explanation given by Sergeant Dabrowski, a combination of the end of a 12-hour shift, an officer that has less than 3 months on the job, a training needs, so on and so forth.
I mean, the explanation given about the officer being a rookie, and that was the reason. I mean, there were 2 other officers there that were not rookies, that were veterans, and that decision was still made. So I don't buy the rookie officer explanation.
Sorry, that just, the rookie officer is just showing her inexperience and her decision making, and she allowed the veteran officers who are at the end of their shift to basically take the call over and steer her towards, we're going home on time, we're not staying. And that's essentially what you see happen, right? I mean, she doesn't take charge of the scene. Someone else comes and takes charge of the scene. And clearly, a 12-hour shift, a couple days in a row, that's likely his end game there.
Yeah, I mean, as far as why there's no arrest, there's really, it's outside of policy. There should have been an arrest, no doubt about it. It's just a matter of why or what factors played into that arrest not being made. Yeah, there was a veteran officer on the scene. You're talking about somebody's got less than 3 months on the job. It's her call, but she's also being advised by an officer who's a 25-year plus veteran. Like I said, there's really not, I would say, a reason that falls within policy as to why there would be advice not to make that arrest.
And she does call the supervisor. You hear the phone conversation, but Commander Glue brought up a good point. She leaves out the one factor that makes this immediately an arrestable situation, is that he'd been drinking. The supervisor never hears that part of it. So, if as a supervisor, if you heard the radio too, there was a lot of stuff going on in the city at the same time. So you're managing all that. But if someone calls and doesn't give you the full information, you have to go off of what they're telling you. If she would have told him that, he would have told her to make the arrest. I guarantee it.
There's just no excuse for this. I think there's complete bias in this, because I don't care if she is at the end of a shift. This is your job. You understand that this is something that you have to do. To say that all these charges should be unfounded is ridiculous, for the simple fact everyone here clearly saw what was going on. Anyone who has eyes and ears can determine what's going on. And just because you're tired on a 12-hour shift, this is what you signed up for. So because you don't want to do your job, then you allow someone to get away with this. But let's be honest, if they had a darker shade of skin, would they have gotten away with this as well? If they wouldn't have had a wealthy father, if they wouldn't have been from Highland or Highland Park, would they, if they weren't in, Sheridan, like, would they have gotten away with this? And I just cannot see anyone saying yes, that they would have gotten away with this. So I think there was a bias in it. Yeah, it may have played a part that she's tired, or she can be a rookie, or whatever that case is. But you're also an adult. You've seen these type of situations before. You understand what your job is about. You know what you're supposed to do. You clearly have this in front of you. You have emissions throughout this entire hour, and yet you still said, I'm gonna let his dad take him. Just make sure you take him to the hospital. He was completely belligerent. He cussed out every officer there. He told him he didn't have to do anything. So that's a resisting arrest right there. Not turning over your ID, and you're gonna show it, but I'm not gonna give it to you. Like, just for that simple thing, they had probable cause there. It was just so many missed opportunities. And then to say that it wasn't based on bias, I can't buy that.
Well, if I could interject here real quick, I mean, everything that you said for the most part, I agree with. The one thing I do want to clarify is this was not at this point a resisting arrest situation. He was uncooperative. They should have addressed the fact that he didn't give up his driver's license. I am not going to, I would say, there's, as far as why there's not an arrest made, there's just not a lot there to basically hang your hat on as far as why it wasn't made. I mean, from the get-go, he displays intoxication, probable causes there. We said it should have been addressed. He said, but I just wanted to clarify, there was not a resisting arrest situation in here. There was probable cause arrest for DUI, at least a zero tolerance DUI, and he was not cooperative, and he should have given up his driver's license, and it could have turned into a resisting arrest situation. It just wasn't there yet. I kind of cut Sergeant Warnick off there real quick, just to make that timely point.
And I do agree with all of that. And I think Commander Glue and I are in agreement. If we were there, we would have made an arrest, but we were not there. That wasn't our call. The issue, and I understand what you're saying and you're feeling, but the issue is we can't prove the bias, right? We can only investigate what's in front of us. So that's where this is at. So that has to be understood, that if nothing is said and there's no evidence showing it, there's nothing that it's not a rule violation.
As far as
whether or not you like it or not, it is what it is.
As far as
can we look further into Rule 4 though?
Yeah,
a better explanation of Rule 4, because performance of duty or failure to, because that's, to me, that would not be unfounded.
Right, that was my exact point. That Rule 4 seems to have been violated. So to say that you were saying that it was outside of policy and an arrest should have been made, then that seems to be a clear violation of Rule 4.
What was the Commander Glue? What was the outcome?
The outcome we pull back to the last.
It was shift level counseling for each officer, and then I think 3 or 4 training classes for the
accused officer.
Yeah, all right. Now I'm gonna give you my opinion on it. The officer should have made the arrest. It was clear early on in this video that that young man should have been arrested. And it wouldn't have mattered to me what color the person was in that situation under the same facts. But, to say that the officer didn't arrest someone because they were white, or it could be vice versa because they were black, unless they speaking those terms, you can't necessarily say that to be true. You're being subjective, basing it on your personal feelings or whatnot as to what should happen. So, it's no argument. It was a failure for the officer to do their job in this situation. I don't necessarily agree with the 12-hour deal because a young officer should have the zeal when they just getting out there to learn this job. So I think that is sufficient. The discipline was put forth, and I think that in these type situations, sometimes it's better to train a person than to give them a whacking, and that's my opinion on it.
If I may, I think that this is, this was tough for all of us to watch. I mean, this is white privilege at its very worst. At its worst. We're putting a lot onto this new rookie officer, and Dee Dee, I know you started young like I did as a 21-year-old cop. I don't care how old you are. You went through the police academy. You're an adult. You are a badge carrying, gun carrying, and she wasn't the only person there. And yet this young man is allowed to curse her out. He's obviously wealthy. He brings up Highland Park over and over again. He puts down Evanston. He flaunts his wealth. He brings up the fact that he's going to wait for his lawyer to get there and his daddy to get there. I know that my brown children would not be given that opportunity. This is absolutely biased. This is biased policing. She doesn't, and I'm not putting it on the young officer only. There were a lot of officers there. This is a failing of our department, of our police department, to not make this arrest. I don't necessarily think that anything beyond training and shift level counseling is going to help that rookie officer, but this is a failing, and this was embarrassing to watch our department with all these officers there behave in this manner, because this would not have happened if that accused boy was of a different color. It just wouldn't have. I don't believe it.
I agree with you, Shauna. Look, not to say she is. A racist doesn't have to make a declaration that I'm racist. A biased person doesn't have to make the declaration that I'm being biased towards one person as against the other. It's their actions that lets us know who they are. That speaks much louder than what they say. And clearly, as Shauna even expressed and articulated, this was clearly biased. We can bring up comparative cases, and we can see the difference in how officers treat one set of people as against the other set of people who have done even much less than what this young man has done. So I can't say that you guys can be blind towards this bias action. I don't know what more should happen to her. No, I can say that, but let's call a rose a rose. Let's call a chair a chair. And that's exactly what this is. I can appreciate that she's new at the job, but she's still, like Shauna said, she had that training and she could have handled this different. And not just her, there were, as the guy kept yelling out, 5 different officers there. And I don't know if there actually was 5 officers. I'm just saying, he was saying that. I think I saw 2 or 3, but that's all I'm saying, is that there were multiple officers there and some with more experience, and that this could have been handled differently. So to say that that this should be unfounded for all of these alleged rule violations, I think is completely dishonest of what we saw today.
I would say real quick, he was mistaking a lot of firemen for cops. I made a note. I think that at one time there might have been up to 4 officers there, including the woman officer that stopped by to assist. But I want to kind of touch on a couple of things that have been talked about already, that we talked about. His behavior and how entitled he behaved is, I would say, made this difficult, obviously more complicated for her to process through. You know, and I definitely would say that I definitely have the mindset that when you sign up for something, you know, with 12-hour shifts, you're gonna have to work through it. You're gonna have to make difficult decisions. You're gonna have to work through complicated people. Not everybody's gonna cooperate. I think it just comes down to, like I said, I looked at the totality of this, and I'm not the one who signed the memo. Like you said, I don't see where the accused officer, if, again, we could probably get into, you know, somebody might say there's implicit bias, somebody might say that there's not. I definitely don't think there's overt bias on her part. I definitely still would stand behind the fact that she got overwhelmed in a complicated situation. If this were to happen again, she would be warranted not training, but much more significant discipline.
Was she out of the FTO program? Completely out?
She was out of the FTO. She does not have prior experience before this. She was out of the FTO program by a little less than 3 months.
On patrol by herself, basically?
Yes.
Okay.
And not, like I said, not experienced from another agency. So she's not somebody who came from, you know, Rolling Meadows, 5 years in Rolling Meadows, had a good familiarity with DUIs and dealing with difficult people. So.
Yeah, I thought about that, her situation once you mentioned it. And I went back to my FTO days back in the day. And once I was by myself, I wanted to arrest everything and everybody. You know what I'm saying? If I had opportunity, if you did something wrong, I was gonna try to, you know, buy the book, but I always try to follow through. So I think that some of the old timers might need to be addressed on this too, kind of, you know what I'm saying? Hey, if they're so willing to go home, let it go. That needs to be a policy that's kind of dealt with as well. Because in my opinion, zero tolerance is serious, right?
I mean,
if the car had not been disabled and okay, I'm just gonna let you go, and the kid crashes, kills somebody later, that's a lot of liability for EPD and the city of Evanston. So yeah, I think, you know the deal.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, as far as, you know, some of us, I know that, you know, some of us have prior police experience. We bring those, being the 3 months out of training perspective to it as well. What would we have done? Arrests, the zeal we would have brought to that, versus also not everybody's that way. People get overwhelmed. They get DUIs can be complicated. They get overwhelmed by somebody. You go on and on. There is no defense, really, a policy defense for not making an arrest. It does not exist. And they said if there's an implicit bias at play, that would be very difficult to prove. He said, me looking at it through 24 hours or 24 years of police work, and obviously knowing the individuals that are there, I feel relatively confident. I have a high degree of confidence that it wasn't overt bias. It was a complicated call with a new officer that got some bad advice from a veteran officer.
But being scared to arrest someone because they're rich, white, and up in your face is bias. That is the same thing. That's still racism at play. So I see what you're saying, Ryan, where you know she's not overtly saying anything. She's not putting words out there, but she's afraid to arrest him. Every officer there is afraid to arrest him and do their jobs properly because of inherent bias. And that bias is to give the benefit of the doubt and let someone go because he is white, rich, threatening with his lawyer and saying his daddy's on the way and has his BMW up on the curb. This would not be the case if we added in a whole different set of circumstances. It just wouldn't. We know that.
He said, I would say this, I agree with a lot of what was said. I think I do view it a little bit differently. And I don't know if that would necessarily be the case. If you get somebody who, all the same circumstances, same skin color, very aggressive, or different skin color, very aggressive, I don't know how it would have turned out. I can't say.
I don't know how it was turned out.
Instances of how it's turned out.
We see it every day. Like Like, let's be real.
People get
I've
chased
seen
and tackled for taking
situations
cell
like
phone
this
video.
play out where arrests should have been made plenty of times where officers haven't made arrests, and it covers the cross section of Evanston. I've been a supervisor here for 12 years or over 12 years. I have seen this play out a cross section of Evanston. If now I would say this, if we're revisiting this issue under similar circumstances with the same officer again and again, then we're all going to view this differently, or at least myself and Sergeant Warnick are going to view this differently. But having supervised officers in similar situations for as long as I have, I've seen this play out similar, had to take corrective action in the past in similar circumstances with a cross section of Evanston, cross section of gender and race.
Let's just make sure we have the same energy with other people with tan skin. How about that? Because this is like, we can't see this any other way. And then for them to, as even if it's just for Rule 4, to say it should be unfounded, like,
Can I speak?
I can't agree with that.
Part of this process is it goes through our internal review, and then it comes to the Citizen Review Commission, and you guys say whether or not you agree that the investigation was thorough or not, and then it goes to the chief of police, and Chief Cook makes the final determination for discipline, which has not happened yet, right? So I just want to make sure that you guys know, just because this is what happened through the chain of command, it hasn't been signed off on and finalized, right?
Well,
So
yeah,
that's where your report is
and
important.
as I stated, I understand the perspective that you all are talking about with respect to bias. I teach that, and I've taught it for a number of years. But to say that the facts and circumstances of this particular case is just based on bias, I don't see that. And it could, I see ignorance in there on the part of the young man, and I see the officer not doing what I would hope she was taught to do in field training in the police academy. But, just to say that I'm gonna penalize the person because if it was a Black person or a Hispanic person, we surmise that it would have been a different outcome is unfair. And I think that the discipline in terms of training is the most important thing that you could do for that officer right now.
And
But I also think it's unfair that Black and browns get a different result than what was here. So that being said, I can appreciate that you teach bias. I've done classes on bias as well, but again, you don't see bias of your officers where other people do see bias.
I look for that every day. All right. I've been Black all my life, and I grew up in Chicago. I grew up in the projects. I understand my bias. I hope other people would understand theirs. But when these police officers don't, if discipline is necessary, I'm willing to do that. But when I think that it's a situation where training would be sufficient, I also believe that that's important to do also. And we have to look at things that if it went to the union, what we can prove. We can't prove that the young lady was being biased, even though her implicitness may be there because it's built into her over her lifetime. But I think the best way to address that is through training.
Yeah, and Chief, and I'm gonna talk to Ms. Richmond, Mr. Whitmore as well. When we're dealing with issues of bias, if this officer exhibits bias, it's something that's going to come out over time, and probably relatively quickly. Again, I know everybody that just listed is that police experience, presently a police officer, so on and so forth. If this is behavior that we continue to see, then that's going to be an establishment of bias. So if supervisors and we get complaints and we look at this and go, well, there seems to be a willingness to make arrests here under similar circumstances, And that's always slanted towards one race and not here where it's always slanted towards another. Right now, also, we're dealing with a statistical sample of 1 with this officer. As this officer continues with her career, if there is bias, it will become evident relatively quickly. But as far as going off the sample of 1, and based on totality of this call and investigation, overt bias is not evident as being part of this, her handling of this call.
I agree with that it's not overt bias, but I think what we need to look at is, again, it's not about just her as a new officer. It's about the systemic issue within the Evanston Police Department, because there were at least 4 to 5 officers there. We're not getting the complaints like the incident that happened on Ridge and I think Church or Lake, just when this commission was being founded, where a young man who mouthed off to the police department, who wasn't even in the car that was stopped, was tackled in the street. We didn't even get that complaint. So I mean, I'm not bringing that in.
There wasn't actually
There was no complaint. I know there was no complaint. But so what I'm saying is that bias isn't just about you arrest a young Black man for driving a car. And so now we're pointing out the fact that you're biased because maybe you wouldn't have done that if he was white. We're doing this. We're flipping the script on this. We're pointing out the fact that this is a young, white, drunk, or at least intoxicated, privileged young man who this officer and multiple officers there are afraid to arrest because of the privilege that he exerts. That's bias. That's still racism. It's just not the kind you're talking about, Commander. It's just not that overt kind of racism. And I realize this is a one-off for her, but it's not a one-off for every other officer there. And
well, you know, we understand that, Shauna, and I definitely understand that racism and bias exists on all levels of policing, state, federal, and local. So this is a problem that is currently, hopefully, being addressed in America by police chiefs across the nation on all levels. And we're not afraid to do that. I understand is racism in the Evanston Police Department. But to say that this situation reaches that utopia of what we seem to see as overt bias or bias in general, I don't see it like that. And I watched the video a couple of times. So I know, you know, I think we all on the same page, and I think we all feel the same way about this video. Not one of us, even Commander Glue, not one of us said that it was a failure of the young lady to do her job. But the disagreement comes in when we become subjective about our opinions of this particular situation. And all of us are going to have different opinions. Some of us are going to have similar opinions, but I do understand where you all are with this conversation.
And again, I want to revisit the fact that if this continues to be a problem with this officer, it's going to come up very quickly.
So my question, Commander, is back where it was when we were in executive session. Can we see if there are several more minutes of video on one of the other officers who was present, because she was just about to answer the question as to why she didn't make this arrest?
Can you pull that up now?
Aaron's going to go in the other room. Sergeant Warner's going in the other room to take a look. And if it's there, we would have to again have it redacted and viewed, you know, in an appropriate manner.
Okay.
So, but Sergeant Warner's going to look right now.
Yeah, if it's other video, I think, you know, if we get down to maybe the last 4 or 5 minutes on the other officer's video, you know, we could see maybe what other people was thinking they missed.
Sure, what's the question?
I'm listening, by the way. I'm looking up something for Sergeant Warner.
So this goes back to the purpose of this commission. I mean, first, let me say that I don't need to keep feeling the heat from the fire to know that it's hot. I don't have to feel the heat several times. But that being said, the fact that we all saw that there were other officers there, and this is our second time reviewing this with these same circumstances, these same allegations, memo and everything like that. Not once, you're just now at this time reviewing to see if there was additional video from other officers. Having heard this video from her body cam several times, having heard her say that at the end, and no one ever thought before tonight to review the body camera of any of the other officers there to see if she gave an answer to why she didn't make an arrest that night. So that goes back to why, and I know we'll go into a vote on this, but I can't agree that there has been a thorough investigation. If we're on a second time, we're still here. And we're going to look to see, oh, there may have been other video, but you guys reviewed this several times.
Well, I looked at it as she failed. That's how I looked at it. You know, I looked at, I could have stopped at 7-8 minutes. You know, when the young guy was being belligerent and disorderly, and what his friend said about him, you know, I was finished then in terms of she should have arrested him. And, you know, as I watched it to the end, you know, I didn't see that that it was a fact of bias, even though we can look at it in hindsight and look at it as what we know goes on in America and what we know that goes on with Black people and brown people, that it could be said it was biased, but it ain't a situation, in my opinion, that I felt she was being implicitly biased and not trying to arrest him because he was privileged. I didn't see that, even though you can draw those conclusions.
So let's move away from the bias. Let's go just back to the purpose of this commission to see if there's been a thorough investigation. This has been investigated several times now. It's coming back to us for the second review. In the findings or the recommendation by the patrol sergeant, it literally says that that this should be classified Rule 4 when we've all agreed that Rule 4 was violated, but it's saying unfounded for Rule 4. So to jump to that conclusion when everyone can see if at the very minimum Rule 4 has been violated, we're still getting an unfounded on that. That's why I can't say that there's been a proper investigation of this matter. It keeps seeming like it's being rolled over. I mean, that's my view on it, but I can't see how everyone can say, oh yeah, she didn't do her job, she should have arrested, but we're gonna unfound Rule 4 where it says that a failure to perform a duty, when that's her duty, and she failed to perform it. So I don't know that we're gonna be able to watch anything else tonight, even if Sergeant Warren finds it.
We would have to redact it. I think what we're just trying to get you an answer as far as, is there something there? And if we can't get it in a timely fashion, then we'll revisit that.
Officer Glue, is there something else in Rule 4 though that we need to know about, or is that just the whole Rule 4?
I think all Rule 4 is failure to perform a duty.
Okay.
So, and you know, obviously it's a big catch-all rule. But this is, you know, one of the reasons we came forward and said we think it's important to watch video is because, and we did say before, wherever that led, that was an important part what this commission needed to do, because that is a big piece of the investigation. It may not lead to consensus between, you know, the way I view it, the way the chief views it, the way that anybody else may view it. But again, for this commission to do its job thoroughly and pick out those things that, well, what was said there, we think that's important. Some of them we have to do.
I appreciate that.
Janitha's point about the investigation as a whole, the fact that we're now having to go back at this point to see if there's additional video. I mean, that should have been something that, I mean, I think that would have been a question in everyone's mind for whoever was doing the initial report when they saw that the video was cut off at the end, right before she was about to give her reasoning, that it should have been followed up earlier than tonight. So I think just in terms of investigations and how thorough they are, you know, this is just a point in saying that, you know, if it's clear that something is missing from the overall picture, that should be looked into and part of what we get presented to originally, rather than us saying, hey, did no one realize that you know, the last few seconds of this video was cut off? Do we have more?
And I will say this, I mean, like, you know, Aaron and Sergeant Warnick and myself are not the ones that review in like this situation where it was a DI, it was largely done by patrol supervisors. But even myself making notes, reviewing the video, making notes to prepare for this meeting and listening to the whole thing all the way through. I mean, I'll admit that's something I missed at the end.
Yeah, you know, I looked at it a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, I got 3 pages of notes on this.
And tonight.
Laying out probable cause and so on and so forth, and things that I thought that were important. Those things will happen, but again, going back to reviewing video is an important part of the goal that's trying to be achieved. Let me check with Sergeant Warnick real quick. I think he jumped on a phone. We'll see where we're at with that, get you an answer so we can move forward. Give me 1 second.
With that being said, so it doesn't seem like we're going to have any resolution with this particular case this evening. And I just want to be clear, you know, this case will not be able to move beyond this commission until you all have reviewed. And if you exhausted the review to the point where you all say, no, you know, you're looking at the thoroughness, not, you know, found unfounded. So like you mentioned, Janitha, earlier, like your responsibility is to say, we feel that this case was reviewed and investigated thoroughly, may not agree with the disposition, recognize that. And that's up to the chief then to take into consideration when making the final disposition. But we want to make sure that we get everything that you all need in order to feel that it was thoroughly reviewed. And I do recognize that at times we're looking at the incident between the individuals and making sure that's what's being reviewed and not the additional conversations that's happening outside. So, you know, I will want to make sure that that is in part, and we will keep revising this process as your feedback is needed to ensure that you all feel like you're being heard and part of this as well. So I'll work with the police department on that and for future meetings.
And you know, sometimes we have to hammer this out. You know, I send stuff back all the time to people and ask questions why, just as you all doing. So it's validity in what you all saying. And I'm not just taking my word as the final say. That defeats what public and citizen review is all about, in my opinion. So we'll make sure it gets put in the right perspective for you.
So Aaron reviewed the other officers' body worn camera footage at the end. I'm going to let him explain what he observed, so
Yeah.
I don't mess it up.
So essentially, the accused officer starts that sentence that Shauna had, and she turns her camera off. And she turns her camera off because the other officer asks her, "Is your camera still on?" And he turns. There's no conversation. They both turn their cameras off before they converse, which they're allowed to because the call's over. So.
Was there any follow-up with the accused officer? I don't recall in the file for this, whether there was a memo from her or whether there was any interview as to her reasoning for the arrest. I don't recall seeing that at all in the file.
There is.
Yes.
Okay. I have the copy of the memo here. We want to
Yeah.
talk anything before I start?
I'm sorry, yeah, I was just gonna say if you can kind of give a synopsis of what she stated. I mean, I'm reading it as well, but
Sure. Give me one second to look it over. You've read it as well? So I think that probably, and the thing that we would all here disagree with, while speaking with the officer, I did not observe any signs of intoxication, or the driver, signs of intoxication, nor did I smell odor of alcoholic beverage. Behavior seemed to be consistent with head injury.
I didn't understand. What'd you say, Commander?
We're talking about, I was asked about the reason the officer gave for not making an arrest.
Yeah, I just didn't hear the last part of it.
Just that basically actions appeared to be the result of a head injury earlier in the day and possible mental crisis. Ambulance requested.
Okay. Any further questions? Anything you want us to look at? This is the time to say it. You know, is it something specific about this deal that you want us to look at or that you don't agree with?
can you have her explain or ask her what was going through her mind, which is her subjective view of, first of all, being told that they drank,
right?
Being told that he was only 20, being told he was drinking and driving, and why all of that did not put in her mind like, well, maybe I should at least do a field sobriety test or a breathalyzer, or like you said, the zero tolerance drinking. Why an arrest wasn't made at that point? Like those are laws that she has to uphold. Right. So that would be my question. Like, just based on the video, you were there, you saw what was happening. Like, don't give me a cover up of why you didn't perform your duty, but based on these specific things, why did you make the decision that you made?
And what was the training classes, Commander, that she was assigned to?
Well, they haven't been assigned yet, Chief, because it has not gone through the final process. Once it goes through you, we'll send her to training class if you concur with it.
Hey, also another question. Y'all have PBTs?
We have a few. We have a couple at the station, and the traffic has one or two. Not every car has them.
Okay.
Like a lot of the suburbs do. It's traffic accident investigation, DUI enforcement, and street survival were the 3 training topics.
So, Shauna?
I was just saying to Doug's point, I mean, I hear what Doug's saying. You don't even need a PBT because he told her that he'd been drinking. So what we're looking at is a falsified police report. I mean, it's false. I hear you, Chief. I know I'm frustrating you tonight because you're like, wait a minute, you're an ex-cop, but
no, it ain't got nothing to do with that, Shauna. It's got to do with what we are able to find in the investigation, and we're not trying to cover anything in this. But you know, you can keep bringing up stuff all night.
Well, in chief, he never admitted to drinking the 4 beers. His friends said he drank 4
His
beers.
friends say he was drinking. He's belligerent. His behavior is consistent. with
I'm
consumption.
I'm not defending the officer's actions in any way.
I'm not defending her report. What I'm saying is that going to Janitha's point that we want a thorough investigation. If this is a thorough investigation, why would she write a report that says that he wasn't drinking and that there was no evidence of him drinking and that it wasn't consistent with him drinking? This is consistent with history, none of which is true.
No.
It's not accurate.
What I read from you was a memo as part of the investigation. Aaron's going to review the police report. But as far as an arrest that should have been made, like you said, there's nothing within policy that justifies an arrest not being made. Nothing.
Exactly.
Well, we're talking about the thorough investigation at this point.
Right.
Which is what we're here for. Like, we can't go out and say, no, go back and arrest some more. You should have met. Like, we can't do that. We know that. We can't give out the punishment. But as far as the investigation, for us to determine whether or not the investigation was thorough or not, that's what we're speaking to at this point. And certain things were not done that could have been done, that could have given a better picture of what was going on. And which would, had those things been done, I think that we would be looking at a different type of memo. And that's all we're speaking.
Agree.
Chief?
No, I'm good. I'm hearing what they're saying. When I get the whole packet again, we'll review it. And if I think something else should be added, I certainly will do that.
So in this case, Chief, does it make sense for you to do your review and have your input as part of the investigation before it so it can come back here to see?
Well, the reason that I asked, did anyone have any things in specific or questions, so that the sergeant and the commander could look at what you're saying or concerns you have, look into those before I make a decision on it. And I wouldn't do that until my goal is, when we put forward a case, and it's for you all to make sure that it's been investigated thoroughly. That's what I want. I don't want to, as I stated earlier, I don't want to be the dictator of what is right and what is wrong when we got a board that has input. And that's what I want to be on point with, is the suggestions that you all make. So if you got some, as you all have stated, Shauna, you brought up about a false police report.
Well, inaccurate police report.
Okay, inaccurate.
It's not about I'm sure her grammar is fine. It is inaccurate. Her facts are wrong.
Her conclusion or her assertion is in contradiction to what's on the video.
Yes, thank you, Commander. I'm not saying.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not saying there's
right.
any.
There wasn't necessarily intent to lie or deceive, but it is in the memorandum. One could make obviously the assertion that, well, that may have been your perception, but that's not supported by our review.
Right.
So the next question would be, would there be any more rules that would come into play? But
I want to raise that because I know we've been focused on Rule 4 here, but I think we need to look again at Rule 2, because that one is any action or conduct which impedes the department's efforts to achieve its goals, missions, or values, and then it goes on. I think the fact that two of the officers, the more senior officers, are saying, well, we're tired, we don't want to have to deal with a citation or an arrest, we just want to go home. I mean, when clearly an arrest should have been made. I mean, I think that plays into whether those officers were engaging in behavior that were sort of contrary to the department's efforts and goals.
In Rule 1 and 2 are typically a catch-all. So I would say that honestly, Rule 6 is probably fitting more of what you say with the incompetency and inefficiency. And that's, no, I don't believe it was in there.
Right.
I also think that she shouldn't be the only one on the chopping block. Again, we said there were several officers there. You know, she's taking all the heat right now from us, but we're also talking about these other officers that are veterans.
Yeah.
And they should not escape culpability in this transaction.
Well, it's their job to mentor younger officers. Absolutely. So
Yeah,
they should
and
tell
you know, I want to look at it as an opportunity for you all to have input to make it better. You know, when I do discipline, you know, it's a mix. You know, I don't like to just be punitive without giving training. So that's how I like to look at it. Now, if in this investigation, those other officers did something out of line, they should be held accountable on that also. I agree with that. But let's just get a little list of things that you all are unsatisfied with. You've been taking notes, Commander Glue?
Yes.
Okay, and then we'll look at that, and then we'll come back at the next meeting with what the determination is on that, and also the just so that they could see that it was both officers entered the video at the same time.
Kimberly, did you have
I just wanted to just clarify, will this be ready by, because we like to give the commission time to review any additional information that may be included, will this be prepared so they can have it by the next meeting, which is the first week in May?
I don't see why.
Well, what are, I guess my question is, what are we reviewing? Are we sending it back?
You're sending it back because it's not.
No, it will not. It likely will not be ready in 4 weeks. I would say by the time it goes back through the chain, because it has to go through everybody again.
Well, we can get that. You know, I don't see why it couldn't.
Because they need time to review it, though.
Well, the supervisors that
you guys need time to review it.
What'd you say, Aaron?
They need time to review it, though, once it comes back up. So if it takes 2 weeks to come back up, that gives the commission 2 weeks to review it. So it's up to the commission. I mean, we could expedite really anything.
Yeah, I would like to see it stepped up so that it shouldn't be that much where we can't come to a consensus on what the commission put forth as being wrong and make the necessary corrections, going and have their deputies look at it.
So, and he said, I'm gonna speak a little bit, and not to use the word informally, but more like thinking aloud. If we're gonna send this back for another review, we're gonna expedite it. I think that Aaron brought up Rule 6. We would do our own review to make sure everything is covered before sending it back. And then we would try to expedite and get it back in front of this committee or by the next meeting.
They will need before the next meeting, so they will need at least a 10-day lead time.
What is our desire with the second video? Do we want the portion, the end of that redacted for your review?
Just, you're good with, let's say, the last 5 minutes?
Yeah, that would work. Yeah, I think that would be appropriate.
And that's from the other officer that was there.
Yes.
And was any of them other officers around when it ended?
I don't believe so. We'll double check.
All right.
I think of a number of things came out of tonight. And again, I think one of the things that we've hit on before is the body worn camera viewing is necessary as part of this process. Especially we review it. When we review it with the body worn camera. All these issues will come out the first time and will be addressed immediately.
So with that, we'll keep this, we will come back again for a review in May, which should be May 5th, will be the next meeting scheduled. And also, we will discuss anything else that you all, so is there anything from this conversation tonight that the commission would like for the chief and I to deliberate more about, you know, your concerns that I heard from the group tonight was around there's a culture or there's this sense that there's a culture around a bias in the culture that lends to something like this to become somewhat subjective, in that we need to kind of look at the whole organization, not just the individual, about how do we continue to train our police officers as an organization, because you're mentioning enough about, you know, this person being privileged versus those who may not have the same type of privilege due to skin color or gender or, you know, well, how are we ensuring that those biases are not playing a part in how our police officers are engaging is what I was hearing the common theme. And that is not just an individual issue, it seemed to be a systematic issue that you're, even though it's one case, but over the cases that you've seen that you would like for us to look into. Is that also what I was hearing tonight?
I would say so. Yeah. And just the I don't know. It's just like that's definitely a concern for us, that it, or for me at least, that I think should be looked at, and how like there really should be a review of the cases for comparability on how cases are handled, whether by rookies or veterans, and then also taking into consideration making sure there's proper training for the rookies, or making sure that the veterans are held accountable also for what they're putting out there as well. So there should be no excuses made.
Maybe, Chief, and maybe we can talk more and bring it back to the committee. This is me just mentally kind of brainstorming. Maybe there's some things that you all want us to see happen in the review process that could be helpful to ensure bias is being acknowledged through the process, because what it seems to be is that you all come from a different lens than those who are in the organization. And even though we're looking at it from an individual case-by-case basis, there are things where maybe it's important that there's some way of checking how are we ensuring that whoever's reviewing these cases, be it not always in the OPS office, but in the sergeant level and commander and so forth, that they're looking through that in a way that their biases also is being ensured that it's not clouding their recommendations for discipline or whatever else that may come from these types of situations.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, some of these issues, I think, could be averted if it was adequate supervision responding to these calls. Because I would expect the supervisor to recognize what should be happening on these things, in particular this scene. You know, we wouldn't even be in this conversation if it was supervision there and the young lady would have did the right thing in terms of arrest. And what her officers did. So that is another way that I would like to see this looked at, is, you know, look at the supervision at them particular points. And this ain't the first case that I looked at where if supervision had been on the scene, it could possibly have been better. But we got it, and we got an understanding. So I'm looking at, Commander, you think we can have a second look by the 21st April, and then they can get it and have it for a couple of weeks to the 5th.
Sergeant Warnick, Sergeant Warnick and I will come in tomorrow, make sure the review that this office needs to do is done tomorrow and sent through. And then we will make it known through the rest of the review and investigation process that this is to be expedited and back by a certain day. If that's agreeable to everybody.
That sounds good. And we'll get it to Kimberly about like the 21st or 22nd. And that'll give you all 2 weeks to take a look at it.
Is there anything else anybody wants to address on it? No.
I would just say that, this is why the commission was reconstituted, and this is why it's important that you be honest. Like I said, you all and the police may have a different perspective in the discipline, but the thoroughness of the investigation we have to ensure is done in a way that everyone feels that it was done properly, professionally, and thoroughly. And so I appreciate your pushing back on that and continue to do that, because this is only going to make our police department better and our process transparent, so people can come in and know if a complaint is put through that it's going to be done and reviewed in a way that they feel their concerns are heard and our corrective actions are taken.
And this is not the first time. Well, under the other commission, we would get stuff kicked back and we make adjustments to it all the time.
Yeah. But I just say to this group, because I know this is a new group. So anyway, I'm done sitting on my whatever I'm doing right now. But I will hand it back over to you, Chair, so I can learn how to pronounce our committee members' names properly over the weekend. I am so sorry, y'all. And it's not intentional. I'm trying.
All right, so do we have any further discussion on this agenda item?
I just want to make sure that in this next review that we're looking at all of the officers involved, not just the one accused officer. Taking a look at that report that she wrote and the accuracy of that report when we compare it to the body cam worn video that was so helpful tonight. But there were multiple officers involved. So like Janitha said earlier, we're kind of dumping this whole thing on her, but there are multiple officers involved, and we should be applying these rules to all of those officers when we take the next look. So we're not sending it back and back and back, because it's the responsibility of everyone there to do.
Were there any other memos submitted by any other officers?
Yeah. We have the second officer, we have a memo submitted by him, the veteran officer that did most of the, the veteran officer that did most of the talking of the other two assist officers that were there. We have a memo from them. I reviewed it. It's pretty minimal. It doesn't really go into too much of the observation. Kind of went there, was there, left type thing. It's more than that. It's in your packet, and I know that everybody's tired. It's just not as insightful as her memo.
Oh, I'm not too tired to do my job, because this is a job that we were signed up to do. I just want that to be put out there.
We did. So
note taken.
I happen to have handy right here.
So can you go ahead and do you have the information that you can summarize the second officer's comments, please?
Yeah, sure. So the other officer stated that they were dispatched to, I don't know if you guys have the memo. It starts out in summary on 5/23/2020, reference case number. This officer was dispatched to an intersection, Sheridan Road, Sheridan Place, to assist another officer regarding a 1050. Upon arrival, turned on body cam, assisted the officer at the scene with the vehicle on a stop with the driver, and upon completing their activity, turned off body camera, returned to the Evanston Police Department.
So it's pretty much what you said.
Yeah, I mean, like.
Is that the officer?
I summarized the summary, but.
Is that the officer who the kid got in his face a little bit?
It's the officer, the male officer who was on scene, not the Wilmette, the Evanston.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a Wilmette officer, and if you if we watch this again or in the future as we're watching videos, Wilmette has a shield. So there, as all the redactions are going on and so on and so forth, and everybody's wearing a blue uniform and blurred out, they have a shield instead of a star. Even watching this myself, I'm like, who's that? And I could tell it was a Wilmette officer by looking at the shield.
So can I ask one question? I'm not a part of it, but those types of statements, is that considered thorough in the police department practices?
Well, I would say for this being a DI and not being put, which is, like I said, very consistent with a situation like this. This is sufficient to start off with. There may be questions later, and especially with the body worn camera, we're able to go back and kind of that speaks for itself. It is factual, but it is minimal.
Okay, do we have any other discussion on this matter? Okay, having no other discussion, if I can have a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I can have a second.
Second.
Can I have a roll call?
Oh yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. I'll just do it.
It's
Janika.
Aye.
Yeah. Okay. I'm working on it. Shauna.
Aye.
Doug.
Aye.
Jamal.
Aye.
Nico.
Aye.
Nika.
Aye.
Did I do it right?
Yes. Just think Nico, but put an A on the end.
You don't know how many times I've been trying to figure this out in this call, like to say it right, practicing. All right, I'm gonna stop now, and it is 8:40 that we're ending the meeting, and then we'll reconvene on May 5th. Good night, everyone. I'm gonna stop.
Night,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Okay.
Night.